5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Start. The directive principles of state policy are an essential part of the Indian Constitution, and they reflect the ideals and aspirations of the framers of the Constitution to establish a just and equitable society. These principles are mentioned in Part 4 of the Constitution, and they lay down the guidelines for the government to follow while formulating and implementing policies and laws. Though they are not enforceable by the courts, they are considered fundamental to the governance of the country. They represent the social, economic and political philosophy of the nation and aim at transforming the country into a welfare state. The idea of directive principles was inspired by similar provisions found in other democratic constitutions, which sought to ensure that political democracy is accompanied by social and economic justice. The makers of the Indian Constitution recognized that political rights alone are not sufficient to ensure the well-being of the people. It was necessary to provide a framework that would guide the state to work towards reducing inequality, eradicating poverty, and promoting the welfare of all citizens. Hence, the directive principles were incorporated as moral and political obligations of the government. The directive principles are not legal rights that can be claimed by individuals before a court of law, but they are duties imposed upon the state. They serve as a constant reminder to the government that its ultimate objective is to secure for all its citizens justice, liberty, equality and fraternity. These principles reflect the goal of building an India where every person can live with dignity and where economic and social conditions enable every citizen to develop his or her full potential. The directive principles cover a wide range of subjects and can be broadly divided into social, economic, political and international principles. Their main aim is to promote the welfare of the people by securing a social order in which justice, social, economic and political, shall inform all the institutions of national life. They emphasize the responsibility of the state to ensure that the wealth and resources of the country are not concentrated in a few hands but are distributed in a manner that benefits all sections of society. One of the most important aspects of these principles is the promotion of social and economic justice. They direct the state to provide adequate means of livelihood to all citizens and to ensure that men and women receive equal pay for equal work. They also prohibit exploitation of workers, including children, and seek to ensure humane conditions of labor. These provisions are intended to create a fair and just economic order where every individual can live a life of dignity without facing exploitation or deprivation. The directive principles also stress upon the need for the state to promote the welfare of the weaker and vulnerable sections of society. They direct the government to take special care of the interests of children, women, scheduled castes, scheduled tribes, and other backward classes. The idea behind this is to remove the historical inequalities that have existed in society and to enable these groups to participate equally in the process of national development. The principles also call for the provision of free and compulsory education for all children and for the promotion of educational and economic interests of the underprivileged sections. Another significant feature of the directive principles is their emphasis on the organization of agriculture and animal husbandry on modern and scientific lines. They encourage the government to take steps to improve the standard of living in rural areas, to ensure equitable distribution of land, and to prevent concentration of agricultural wealth. They also direct the state to promote cottage industries and cooperative organizations which can help in generating employment and improving rural economy. The directive principles further guide the state to secure a proper working environment and to ensure that citizens are provided with the right to work, to education, and to public assistance in cases of unemployment, old age, sickness, and disablement. This shows the intention of the Constitution to create a welfare state where the government assumes responsibility for the well-being of its people. The principles also reflect the moral and cultural vision of the nation. They direct the state to promote respect for national heritage, to protect monuments and places of artistic and historical importance, and to foster the spirit of compassion for living creatures. They call for the prohibition of the consumption of intoxicating drinks and drugs, except for medicinal purposes, in order to maintain public health and morality. They also encourage the state to protect and improve the environment and to safeguard forests and wildlife. These provisions underline the importance of maintaining a balance between development and environmental protection. The directive principles also include provisions relating to international peace and security. They instruct the state to promote international peace and friendly relations among nations, to respect international law and treaty obligations, and to encourage settlement of international disputes by arbitration. This reflects the commitment of India to contribute to global peace. Even though the directive principles are not enforceable by law, they have great significance in the governance of the country. They act as a moral compass for the government and influence the making of laws and policies. The Constitution itself declares that while making laws, the state shall be guided by these principles. Over the years, many laws and reforms have been introduced in India to give effect to these ideals. For instance, land reform laws and policies for environmental protection have all been influenced by the directive principles. The relationship between fundamental rights and directive principles has been a subject of discussion and interpretation. Initially, fundamental rights were given primacy because they were enforceable in courts, while directive principles were only advisory. However, over time, the judiciary has tried to harmonize both by interpreting the Constitution in a way that neither is subordinate to the other. It has been recognized that both are complementary and essential for the attainment of the objectives of the Constitution. Stop.